really excited. So Al, why don't you go ahead and just provide your introduction, say hello, and jump in with who you are.
Sure, happy to. And thank you so much, Jenny and Japeth, for having me here. Hi, everyone. My name is Al D. I am the founder of MBA Schooled, which is a website that guides prospective and current MBA students on how to navigate business school and grow their career. Before that, I spent most of my career at Deloitte Consulting, where I worked as both an analyst, as a consultant. I went to business school and I was sponsored through Deloitte and ultimately returned as a senior consultant. And a lot of the work that I did was really at the intersection of digital tools and technology and organizational transformation. Today, I have a day job in which I work as a product marketer at a software company. But on the side, my blog MBA Schooled and my podcast MBA Insider and many of the other things that I do is all geared around helping people grow their careers, specifically MBA students. And a big portion of the students are those who are either pursuing a career in management consulting or thinking about pursuing a career in management consulting. And so it's great to be on here. I remember looking at management consulted when I was going through the process many years ago. And so it's an honor to be included. And I love the work that you and your team, Jenny, have been doing over the years. And so thank you for having me on.
Awesome. Well, we're so happy to have you. We're excited to get to know you personally and professionally today on the call. And so I want to start out with a couple of first questions about you so that we can get to know you. So the first one is, would you rather have an East Coast summer or a West Coast summer, and why?
Oh, geez. Well, and Jenny, we were talking about this before, but it's really hard to beat, particularly if I can get upstate New York East Coast summer. I grew up in upstate New York, and summers as a kid, were the best. Being in upstate New York, it certainly was hot, but not too hot. And then obviously on the West Coast, particularly where I live in San Francisco, summers traditionally are not the best time of years. And so if I can get that specific upstate New York summer, count me in for that.
Love it. Second question, place that is on your travel bucket list.
Yeah, so I really want to go back to Hawaii. That was actually the last place I went before COVID, and I just love it there. I cannot stop my mind anywhere, but in Hawaii, I can stop my mind and I can unwind. And so I can't wait to get back there when it's safe to do so again.
That's a wildly challenging situation to stop your mind. Sometimes I feel like my mind races faster when I go on vacation.
I know, same here. Not in Hawaii though, for me.
Okay, awesome. You should go soon.
Yes.
Great. The third thing is your favorite activity from the COVID experience. So whether it was in quarantine or just kind of new way of doing things, what's your favorite activity from the last 6 months?
Honestly, it's this. I started a podcast during COVID. It was always part of the plan. For those of you who want to check it out, it's called MBA Insider. But when COVID hit, I had some free time. And so I was like, you know what, let's just start it now. And I'm sure you can relate a little bit. It is a lot of fun and it is a really great opportunity to learn. And yeah, I've really enjoyed it. So I'm going to say podcasting has been my favorite activity.
I love it. Same here. Mostly mine was because everybody else in my team became bossier during COVID and they made it happen. I'm really grateful for it, but that's exactly what happened in the true situation. Good. Okay. Number 4, biggest risk that you've ever taken that has paid off for you.
Sure. I think that it probably was choosing to go to business school when I did. I'm a big believer that when you make decisions in life, once you make them, a series of events kind of just happen that if you weren't to make that decision, your life could look entirely different. And I was in a situation where I could have chosen to go to business school, or I could have stayed at Deloitte and applied again the following year. And I chose to make the choice to go. And it was on the fence and I wasn't sure at first, but going back to what I said, when you make decisions in life, it opens some doors and it closes others. And I'm really grateful that I did that because I wouldn't trade anything for the life that I have now. So I would say that was a risk, but it ended up being a great one.
Love it. And then last question, a career that you could have pursued but did not, and what the reason was that you didn't pursue it.
Sure. I was very fortunate that coming out of undergrad, even amidst the 2008 recession, I was fortunate to have a number of opportunities. And one of those opportunities was to either do Teach for America or to go work at Deloitte and a couple other things. And I ultimately chose Deloitte. So I could have been a teacher. I have the utmost respect for teachers. I think they're wonderful. I know so many that have made an impact in my life. But ultimately, I decided to go the corporate route because I felt it was the right decision, and it was. But ever since then, I've definitely always had this thought of one day getting back in a different capacity, and in some ways, I still do that now. And I'm sure you can relate because you, in many ways, are a teacher as well. But it was a path I could have taken, and I am very happy with the decisions I made. But at the time, it definitely was something I was considering.
Absolutely. I would say actually more that I'm a lifelong student that
Sure.
just keeps learning.
Fair.
And then every once in a while I crash into people that ask me questions. But yeah,
Fair enough.
I absolutely agree. Well, great. I'm excited to just hear a little bit more about your background. So I'm going to go in a little bit of chronological order just to
Sure.
understand you and your professional career. And the first place I want to start is that when you were 5. So in your
Yeah.
book, you
Yeah.
have this very kind of interesting concept that you said that you decided to get an MBA when you were 5. And I need to know all the things. I want to understand how did that happen? What kind of conversations were happening in your home or with your friend group that led them to talk about this MBA experience? So if you can just walk me back a little bit and tell me a little bit about your upbringing and that particular instance, I'd love to know more.
Yeah, happy to. So, and for those of you who are listening, Jenny's referencing my book, MBA Insider, which is really a how-to guide to navigating business school. But yes, in the book, I wrote about how when I was 5, I wanted to get an MBA. And I think very much like many of us, when we're younger, we take a lot of our cues from our parents and what they do or what they say. And my parents both worked at Xerox Corporation. Some of you will not know who that is because it's not relevant in your time, but I think Jenny and I know very much who Xerox was because in our time, it was a very relevant company. But they were in the heyday at Xerox. My parents worked at Xerox in the heyday, and they both got to Xerox after they went to business school themselves. And so when they would talk about their day, they would tell me what they did. And obviously I didn't understand it. But one of the things I did understand was that when I asked them, I said, oh, well, like, how did you get your job? And they said, well, it was because of education. And education is really important. And in addition to, going to college, there's this other thing you can do, which is to get another degree, which can get you even more opportunities. And so that was when I was like, oh, okay, well, if these are my parents who I respect and who I listen to, and they're doing this, well, then I need to do it too. The other anecdote with this is that I also said that I wanted to be an engineer, a firefighter, and maybe like a cop. And so I went 1 for 4, so batting 250, because I did get the MBA. But that was a good one to pick because I'm very happy with the profession that I ended up choosing.
But also classic consultant move to hedge like that. I like that.
Of course, always. Got to. Even before I knew what that was, I was already doing it. That's how I knew I was supposed to be a consultant.
Love that. Well, as a spoiler, you went to Deloitte after undergrad, but let's go again, 1 season back from there. So in undergrad, you're deciding what to study, you're deciding what internships to do. Walk me through your thought process there.
Yeah, of course. And so I actually, and granted, this was in 2008, 2009, where internships were important, but not nearly to the degree that they are, I think, today. So with that context, I actually went through my time in college without actually having a formal internship. And it was one of the things that I did instead was I was an orientation leader. I was a first-year orientation leader. So part of my job was to welcome incoming first-year students to Boston College, where I was a student, and to help them pick their classes, to help them get acclimated, things of that nature. This was a natural extension for me. I was a student leader. I was in student government. I was a resident assistant. I led retreats. I was student body president my senior year. So I was involved in all the things. And what was interesting is that I was an orientation leader one of the summers between my sophomore and my junior year. And I was thinking about during my junior year of what was I going to do during the summer between my junior and senior year. My family was like, you need to get an internship. You need to have that on your resume. We're going through the worst economy literally since the Great Depression. If you don't do this, you're going to put yourself at a serious disadvantage. And I said, you know what? I think you're right. But I also know that in this role, number one, it gives me a lot of energy and I'm making an impact. But number two, the skills I'm using, I think they're going to be really valuable to whatever I end up doing. I just have this hunch. based off of the things I'm learning and what I'm able to do. And that's what I truly, truly felt. And so the lesson there for me was that it's important to listen to mentors and people, but also at some point, like once you listen to the right people, if your gut's telling you something after you've done your due diligence, you should follow it. And so I did. But eventually I finished the summer and I knew, okay, I got to find a job now. How do I do this? Well, the good news is that after my dad left Xerox, he started his own consulting firm. And so I had at a high level this idea of like, okay, there's these people who come in, they solve business problems, and it's really intellectually challenging, and it was really fast paced. And so I knew that. But one of the things that happened was that when I was involved in student government, one of the things that happened is that a lot of times these companies would reach out to the student leaders, right, of the various clubs, because they knew that that was a potential really good way to find top talent. And the two presidents before me had recruited to Deloitte, and one of them actually was at Deloitte. And so he was kind of the one that said, hey, this could be a really good opportunity for you. You should really check it out. And he said, oh, by the way, if you're going to do this, like, make sure you learn all about the job, make sure you know this thing called like casing. It's like this thing you're going to need to like master, and like make sure you do these things called coffee chats and informational interviews, because like they're important. And then he kind of like left, and like I had to go figure all that stuff out. Long story short, I went through the process. I was able to land an opportunity at Deloitte and start in their business technology analyst program in the Boston office. But the takeaway there was a couple things. Number one, it's great to have internships if you have them, but really think about skills and competencies more than anything else, right? The more you can do things in college that give you skills and competencies that can lead to you being a successful consultant, the better off you're going to be. And I was fortunate that because I was so involved in so many activities where I was communicating regularly, I was working on cross-functional teams, I was working with lots of stakeholders. Like I had plenty of stories that I could use in interviews to say, hey, here's how I can demonstrate I have the skills of what it takes to be a successful consultant. So started off full-time, and yeah, that's where it all started though.
Awesome. So I want to know a little bit more about the interview process specifically. And I feel like everybody kind of has this very vivid memory of their interview process in consulting because it's kind of an extraordinary experience. I don't know how vivid your memory is, but can you tell me what was happening, how many interviews you went through, or what kind of, how, even if there were ways that you didn't do perfectly, but you were able to compensate in other ways, just some of those insights I think could be helpful for folks.
Yeah, sure. And Jenny, please do keep me honest, because like I'm dating myself here because this was a while ago. But
I know.
I'm still in touch.
You seem like your memory is still intact, though.
It is, but I'm still in touch with my colleagues at Deloitte and other firms, and so I have a sense of what the process is like now. But to be completely honest, I don't think it has changed significantly.
Yeah.
So I'll give you the lowdown here. So it started kind of with a traditional phone screen, if you will, or talk to the recruiter, who honestly at that point, because Deloitte was a on-campus recruiting at Boston College. And so they, at the time, had a formal kind of recruiting program with a series of events, in-person events on campus where you got to know the recruiter, the recruiting team, et cetera. And so we had like a little bit of a phone screen, but like at that point, honestly, it was mostly like hey, it's good to see you or talk to you again for like the 7th time because I've been at all your events. And the takeaway there, though, is that for the opportunities you do get, if there's a company you like, it's important to engage with them and show up because, the call lasted 15 minutes, but like it really didn't even need to be had because she knew who I was. She had already seen my resume. She already knew what I kind of had my background. So she felt comfortable kind of moving me along. So we had some first round interviews.
You sounded like a slacker, so I'm surprised.
I know, right? Seriously. That was a tough call. It was a tough
class,
call.
I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going.
So after that, I had like an on-campus, half interview day, if you will. And so that definitely can feel a little daunting because for me, I had never done anything like this. And so what it was is that you have a series of back-to-back interviews. You might get a break a little bit in between to catch your breath, but it's a combination both of more of the behavioral side of the house, where they're trying to get to know you and your background and to get into specific skills and experiences you have to see if you could be a good fit. And then there's also a case element to it as well. In the first round on campus, the case was probably about 30 minutes. So, and in the case, very much is probably the same types of questions and cases that you certainly preach in all the work that you do here at Management Consultant. And if I remember correctly, mine was something along the lines of, because I was going for the technology track, there's a company that is trying to decide to implement a new solution that's going to help transform the way they deliver customer service. They're trying to pick a vendor. What are some of the considerations that they should take into account? And it literally starts with that. Now, the good news is that I was prepared for this because I had gone to the events, because I had done my homework, because I had looked up what casing was and had a good sense of what to expect. But it was pretty broad and open-ended at the time. But then, you certainly start to have a conversation about it where you kind of lay out how you're going to approach it. You lay out, the things you're going to consider. You lay out some of the options and maybe some key questions. And then they not push back on you, but then they probe on you on that and say, okay, well, let's talk about this some more. And they ask you some more questions. And then you kind of think through some of your own kind of thoughts of how you would answer. And you kind of go back and forth. The biggest takeaway that I had from it was that they wanted to know how I thought, and they wanted to know that I also had a little bit of subject matter knowledge, at least to feel confident that if they were going to put me in front of a client to do something, they would feel comfortable knowing that I had the communication skills and enough of the acumen to handle that. So that was the first round. And so there's probably about 2 behaviorals and maybe 1 case. The next round, which actually at the time literally happened the next day. So they literally call you like that night and are like, hey, can you come to the Deloitte office?
Yeah.
And so they bring you in and you do more of the same, but this time it's a little bit longer. And I think that in the first round, the people who were interviewing me tended to be at the manager or senior manager level. Mm-hmm. And in the second round, there was 1 that was at the manager level, but then there was 2 that were at the partner or managing director level. So a little bit higher up. And in this case, I think I had 3 interviews, and with the manager, I had a case. With one of the partners, it was a behavioral, and then with the other partner, it was more of a case. And it was more of, the same, where they're trying to understand how you think, they're trying to understand your thought process, and they're trying to get a sense of how you would respond in a client situation. So that was the process. And I think that there was literally a Thursday and Friday, and then I might've found out the following Tuesday that I got the offer. And so they were pretty quick and efficient around that. So I think the biggest thing for me is that, and much like probably many of your listeners out there, for a lot of you, this might be your first time really having a pretty rigorous interview process, right? More than just a phone interview here or a phone interview there. And so I think the preparation to it is really, really, really critical. And I wish I could say that there was these really bad memories or it was so bad, but truthfully, and I'm not just trying to toot my own horn, I think it was pretty, to me at least, pedestrian because I did do the homework because people warned me that hey, if you want to be successful, this is what it takes.
What homework did you do? How did you prep for the behavioral interview? How did you prep for the case interview?
Sure, absolutely. So for the behavioral interview, what I did was I went to my career center, but also talked to some of the people on the campus recruiting team and just kind of said, hey, what are the types of questions that people ask in these interviews? So I got those questions. Then I put myself in the library or put myself in the cafeteria, and I literally typed all of them out. And then I started thinking about, okay, how can I answer these? What would a good answer look like? Now, to be honest with you, I didn't know what a good answer would look like. But what I did know is that there are people who know what a good answer looks like. And so once I typed out what I thought some good answers were, I went to them and said, hey, how does this sound? And for a lot of them, at first, they were like, this could be better. But it was a good data point to understand what good looks like. And so once I got that, I started just a little bit just practicing how I might pitch it. And I was fortunate enough that one of my best friends was also recruiting for consulting at the time. And so we started practicing together because we both kind of needed to do that. On the case front, Deloitte did have a case workshop for all of the candidates who were being interviewed. And so they exposed us to, this is what it's going to be like. Here's what we look for. And then I think the last part of that workshop is you kind of work on one in a small group together, and they kind of came around and said, oh, just to kind of give guidance and advice. I mean, at the end of the day, they want you to be successful, right? They, it's in their best interest to find the best candidates. So they want you to be successful. So they were very good. particularly at the undergraduate level, of really providing that guidance, because it is something that's pretty foreign to a lot of people. And so I took advantage of that. And then outside of that, like there were some cases like on the website that I looked at and practiced. But yeah, I mean, like I think, and then I, certainly looked around. Like I basically Googled like consulting case, like Deloitte Consulting, like business technology cases, and whatever I could find things, I found them and I just practiced. And I think having an accountability partner really helped, because it's tough to do it in a vacuum by yourself. I mean, I think you might be able to practice some mental math on your own, or maybe some like drills like on your own. I think that's okay. But like real live casing, like you need to get that feedback, and you need someone to push you. Because if you just do it on your own, I don't think you'll truly get there. But yeah, that's kind of what it was like for me. And I found that on the behavioral front in all my interviews, I felt pretty comfortable, right? And with that, it was really just getting the questions, understanding what good looked like, writing my own answers, and just practice. On the case, I had to spend a lot more time understanding the process and how it worked, and getting feedback of like what's due when, like how to approach things like in that nature, just because I had less exposure to it. But eventually I got to a good point, and the result turned out pretty well.
Well, I heard you before say that you felt like the biggest risk that paid off was going to get your MBA when you did, which
Sure.
was, as I understand, a part of the sponsorship process for Deloitte.
Yeah.
So what do you have to do to get sponsored by a consulting firm to go get your MBA?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Deloitte has a program, which is still, at least for now, in place, called the GSAP program. It stands for Graduate School Assistance Program. And with that program, for consultants who qualify for it, you basically can apply to top MBA programs. And if you get in, you go full time. And if you do come back to the firm, number one, you come back at a higher title. So you come back usually at senior consultant level, which also means a pay increase and whatnot. But over the course of the 2 years that you're back, they will reimburse you for your education. And in order to be considered for this, there's a couple things. Number one, you have to have what they call sustained high performance. And so Deloitte has a rating system for performance reviews. And for a number of years, you will have to have demonstrated that you hit certain like thresholds on those performance reviews. So sustained high performance is number one. Number two is that you need to have support from leadership within the firm. So you need to actually have sponsors of people who say, yes, Al, like we will sponsor you because we think you would be a valuable asset to invest in. The third thing is that you need to actually go through an application process internally, which is like a written application. And then you actually go and make a presentation where you build a business case for why you think the firm should sponsor you and pay for you to go to business school. And you really need to think about like, what's the ROI, right? Like what is Deloitte, like in their mind, like if we're going to pay for this person to go, like what value we're going to get in return. And so you kind of have to think through like what that is. And so that's kind of the process. And oh, by the way, like you still have to apply to business school and do all the fun stuff as well.
Do you remember what was in that presentation for you?
I do. So I talked about, for me, just a lot of the work that I had done was at the intersection of technology, change, and helping organizations adapt to technology and innovation. And so I said that I wanted to go get my MBA because I wanted to help future clients adapt and evolve their organizations through the impacts of technology. And I said, if you look out into the future, and if you were to say, is there going to be more technology or less technology, there's going to be more. And I don't think that companies are prepared in terms of being able to change and transform. And so by sending me to business school, by giving me access to learning, by giving me access to network, by giving me additional opportunities, when I return, I'm going to be able to help companies think through all this disruptive technology so that they can change and take advantage of it. And so it was enough at the time for them to kind of accept that. And I mean, I wouldn't call it like a prognostication because it was pretty clear that like technology was like really critical, but it really ended up coming true in a lot of ways because that is the type of work I did do when I came back to the firm. So
I love it. Well, you decided to go to Keenan Flagler. Why? And
Yeah.
what has made you grateful for that decision, especially in the year since you've graduated?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when and you will appreciate this from having grown up on the East Coast, when I was looking at business schools, one of the things I realized was that I had lived my whole life in the Northeast. And while that was great, there was a lot out there in the United States that I had not seen. And so when I applied to
Much
business
less the
school,
world, right?
absolutely, 100%. And when I had seen, or when I realized was that I wanted to see more of the world and live in a different place. And so I purposely applied to business schools outside of the Northeast. So that was number one. Number two, what I realized in the application process, and it was more of something I knew, but like it really came to fruition, is that I really liked small programs. I love the ability to build relationships with others. I really love the sense of community. And that was what was prevalent in schools like UNC. UT Macombs was another one. They're about the same size. There's a couple other ones. And then the last thing is that there was quite a few UNC Keenan Flagler MBA alum at Deloitte. And I had worked on a couple firm activities with a few of them. And they just seemed like not just like good consultants, but just genuinely good people. And I am someone who has always prioritized being and surrounding myself around good people. And so it seemed like it was a good place to be. And on top of the fact that I looked at its curriculum and it made sense, on top of the fact that I looked at, the career outcomes and where they sent students, and it somewhat aligned what I was thinking and the like. And so on top of all the things that you would want to do before making a plunge like that, like I did look at those things, but it really was about the people in the community. And then also certainly the location as well. And so when I look back on it in terms of, what has paid off or like, how has it been valuable? I mean, the job I have now happened partially because of one of my classmates and good friends from my time at UNC. And ironically enough, the reason why he got his job at the company that we both work at now is because I actually helped him get the job. Because I interned.
You're being mysterious. Can we name the company or should we not name the company?
It is a leading CRM software company with a lot of
the leading. Yeah.
A lot of tall buildings. I work at Salesforce. But yeah. So I mean, number one, very tactically, like that's something. Number two, I have been to weddings. I have been to baby showers, celebrations for many of my classmates. And so I'm very grateful for the people that I've met. Number three, as I've grown, and I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit later, but as I've grown MBA Schooled over the past 5 or 6 years, they've been instrumental in helping me do that and have been incredibly supportive in a lot of different capacities. So, I mean, those are just like some tactical kind of examples in addition to the learning, in addition to the opportunities that I got. I think for me, the other thing is that like, I think part of the reasons why I was really able to get a lot of value out of that experience was because it was a little bit of a smaller school. There were, if you wanted to really take something on or be proactive about something, you could really own it. You weren't, at a bigger school where you had to fight against other people. Not that you're like fighting against other people, but when there's just more people, sometimes it's a little bit harder. And as a result of that, I got to do so many things even outside the traditional realm that were really, really valuable and meaningful or helped me grow or things that I remember. So it was a really good decision and I got a lot of value out of it.
I mean, you said a lot of good reasons, but you could have just said the real reason, which is that the Research Triangle has the best fried chicken in the country.
It does. And it's funny that you say that because this is so embarrassing, but whenever I go back to Chapel Hill, that is like one of the things that I go and look for right away.
Right? It's so good. Well, I mean, you have other like really, fancy reasons, but sure, I just think sometimes we got to get down to that.
No, absolutely. Food is absolutely a priority. Not to mention Raleigh-Durham Airport, one of my favorite airports.
Right. So great.
And you can get in and out in like 15 minutes. Parking is $6 a day. Okay, so some of these people won't care about this, but I know you and I do care about these things. And maybe
everyone cares about this. Okay. Let's make that assumption.
Particularly living in San Francisco, I can tell. I don't know what the parking is at SFO. I can tell you it is not $6 a day. Anyway, our RDU is a wonderful area for the fried chicken, for the for the airport, but also for everything else that it brings.
Agreed. Good. Well, I do. So I have two more questions.
Yeah.
The first one is just while you were at Keenan Flagler, I understand that was when the idea for and the genesis of MBA Schooled happened.
Yeah.
And so I can tell that you've really been pretty much a chronic underachiever. And so
Sure.
the idea to do something else during your MBA other than just your MBA was a real leap for you.
Sure.
But no, what was it that
Sure.
out of all of the things that your overactive mind could have put yourself to, what was it that made that one stick?
Yeah. So during my second year of business school, at this point, I had accepted my return offer to Deloitte. So, and in business school too, like once you kind of get once you know where you're going, like it definitely breathes like a sigh of relief. I mean, I still had classes, I was still involved in activities, but I was playing quite a bit of golf and realized I had a lot of free time. And, it was one of those things, like I've always tried to have a good sense of gratitude for all the things that I have. And I think that I do. But one of the things in realizing that was just that you only get one business school, and playing golf was fine and it's great. But I want to make sure that like when I walk across the stage and get my diploma, I can feel proud of saying like I made use of all the time that I had in this experience. And what that made me think about was that, all right, well, like if I don't really have too many pressing things, like what's a problem that is worth solving, right? Like what's something that's worth exploring? Like how can I feed my own mind and my own curiosity to do something that is either fun or engaging or helps me learn and grow? One of the things that I realized in business school, or not even realized, or just like was thrown in my face, was that whenever I would talk to my family, or not my direct family, but my cousins or my aunts and uncles, or even my friends who didn't go to business school, they would always ask me, what is business school actually like? What do you actually do in business school? Or like, how does business school help you grow your career? And I just got the question like so many times, I was just getting sick and tired of it. And so I was like, first thing I did was like, I asked my classmates like, hey, do people ask you these questions like all the time? And obviously everyone said yes. And I said like, all right, like I'm going to change that. And so initially, one of the reasons why I started MBA Schooled was that I wanted to be able to have an answer to that question, but also I wanted to be able to kind of like share that. One, because I've always kind of been someone who's loved the idea of sharing knowledge and ideas. But two, because if I'm going to keep repeating this thing over and over and over again, like I want it to be able to be useful in a way that is useful for others. And if other people are running into this problem too, that would be good to help them share a story as well. And I also knew, just like having gone through the admissions process, just how much effort it takes to find information. I was really lucky that I worked at a firm like Deloitte, who has lots of people who go to business school. But there's a lot of people who don't have the privilege of having that, and sometimes are hindered in terms of their access to information or opportunities and the like. And so I started MBA School just to really educate people on what business school is really like. And it started off as a project during my second year that I spent free time on, and I kept up with it when I went back to Deloitte, and probably around a couple years into it, it started to get some traction, and a couple schools would come to me and say, hey, would you mind doing a presentation on campus? Or, hey, would you mind doing a webinar? And I think probably about 2019 is when I started to realize, like, I've learned a lot. I've written over 200 articles. I've been doing this for 5 years. I want to take this to the next level. I want to find a way to really scale this and drive impact. And so that's when I decided to write a book called MBA Insider, which is a how-to guide for navigating business school. And it really chronicles everything that I had learned from all the conversations I had, all of the articles I wrote, all of the people that I talked to over the years about how to navigate the MBA experience and to get the most value out of it. And the ultimate goal is to use it as a way to help you grow your career. So it launched the book, which was great. I launched a podcast around it. But it really started just from a really, like, not even a big problem, just more of an annoying thing of like, why do people keep asking me these questions? And so that really is, the lesson for me from that experience was, well, two things. Number one, always take advantage of the time you have when you have opportunities like in business school, where you do kind of, control your own destiny in terms of how you can spend your time. But number two, follow your curiosity. Like if there's something that's bothering you, if there's something that you're spending a lot of time thinking about, let your mind explore it. I wouldn't have told you 6 years ago that one day, like answering these annoying questions would one day allow me to be an author or to have a podcast or to go and do workshops on campus. But as a result of kind of exploring that, it's part of the ways I was able to find where I am in here. So.
Love it. Awesome. Good. Well, and my final question before we open it up to the rest of the audience is just a reflection on your career thus far.
Yeah.
So what would you say is one point of recommendation that you would advise for people to utilize from what you've done? And then what's one thing that you would caution them to do that you've learned from that you wouldn't do over or would recommend that people kind of bypass as they're thinking about navigating their careers?
Sure. So the one piece of advice I would have is to learn how to learn. And I think this is particularly relevant for all of you who are interested in consulting, because as a consultant, you are a professional learner. You will be asked to learn things and to have to know things that you will not have known. And your job is not to become the smartest person on the topic, but your job is to learn the fastest on it possible to be able to deliver an outcome. And then maybe over time, at some point, you will become an expert in something. But I think that if you can learn how to learn and to kind of feed your curiosity and use those opportunities as curiosity and explore them, as opposed to thinking them as inhibitors of like, I don't know that, or like, I've never done that before, I think it will open up opportunities to you, as well as help you navigate situations as a consultant, or even in other, if you end up going in other paths as well. And I think this becomes even more important, as we think just about how technology is changing the way that we work, right? None of us thought we were going to be Zoom instructors 6 months ago, but here we are, right? And that's just a very specific example. But I think if you can learn how to learn and just be open to learning and doing that, I think it will serve you well as a consultant, but also whatever you end up going to. And then in terms of some things to avoid, so one of the things that got me where I am today is because I was always looking around to see what other people were doing and trying to understand what the benchmarks were for success. And I think that in a lot of ways it can be helpful in terms of just giving you an understanding out there of what your options are. Where I would caution you and where I hope you avoid is that being able to, or taking those benchmarks as what you need to do for yourself. The only benchmarks that matter when it comes to success for yourself are the ones that you set for yourself. And I'll be honest with you, I don't think I learned that really until I left Deloitte, when I had to start thinking about, well, like, what do I actually want to do? Like when I was in college, it was like, do well in school to get a good job. And then it was like, when I was at Deloitte, like do good jobs so you can get sponsored so you can go to get your school paid for. And then I came back to Deloitte and it was kind of like, all right, well, like, what do I do now? And so, I mean, I had a good time back, but when I was ready to leave, that was really the first time where I really had to ask myself, like, what is success for me? And I think I probably gave myself a lot of gray hairs over the years, wondering if I was going fast enough, if I was doing the right things, or Johnny and Sally are this, why am I not that? And so if there's a piece of advice I could give is that I think it's okay to look out there to see what others are doing, but I would caution you against using using those external benchmarks of success, and really encourage you to think about what is success for you.
Thank you so much, Al. It's been great to have you on the call.